The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Breaking humanity, one soul at a time. This is the World You Don't Know radio show with your host, Nick O'Connor.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome back. My guest has turned up. Now, we'd have about 15 minutes to have a quick chat, but I think my guest has agreed to come in next week. I want to welcome my guest. Good evening, Paul. You're very welcome to the show.
I'm glad I made it, finally.
Well, you did get lost in the Clondalkin area. And as I said to you, Paul, if you don't know where this place is, it can be quite a bugger to find, you know. But listen, we will do a full hour next week. So, folks, I'm going to have Paul on next week. I'm not going to have anybody else on, just Paul, and we'll have a great chat next week. But something I'm going to talk about tonight, Paul, for the last few minutes of the show is something called NESARA. Now, that's something I'm not aware of. Do you want to explain to the listeners what that is?
Yeah, NESARA actually came about in America, and it actually stands for the National Economic Security and Reformation Act. And why it's important to us is, in looking for sovereignty and freedom politically, America are doing it through NESARA, and it came about in the 80s and 90s. There were government people, bankers and local developers trying to take land off farmers all across America.
Right.
And they were unfairly treating them. These people were paying their mortgages, and suddenly the bank wanted to foreclose on them. Anyway, it turned out that amongst these farmers, one of them was his father. This guy was a general in the army, and his father owned the land. And when he found out what was going on, he started to look into it, and he got all the farmers together through the Farmers Union, and they brought the case through the courts. And in the process of bringing the case through the courts, what they discovered was that America became a corporation in 1871.
And that's something we all know anyway, and have probably known for years. So
a lot of people don't. And what was happening was these guys were just part of a cabal and trying to take all this land back for their own use. And anyway, when they put it through the courts, it went through the Supreme Court in America. And when they discovered that America was operating outside its constitution, they asked the Supreme Court judges to come up with a solution to bring America back into operating as a country under its own constitution. And that's where NESARA came from. It came from the Supreme Court judges. And what it was, they were suggesting that the government of the day would step down, the legal system of the day would step down, and an interim government would go in for 120 days while they explained to people. It was a kind of a no shame, no blame situation, but they wanted to bring the country back. And of course, although they suggested this is what should happen, nobody wanted to act on it. Now, Clinton was forced to sign the papers, which he did under duress, but he wouldn't act on it. And they put a kind of a moratorium. There's a word for it, I can't remember at the moment. But anyway, it was forbidding people to speak about this, and because the government weren't prepared to act on it, and neither were the legal system, and it really was the way to get rid of the cabal and the false government.
And is this to bring America back to a constitutional republic like it was originally intended to be?
And in fact, it has happened. It happened in 2015, and the present. You should look up General Dunford, who is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And the Pentagon, the majority of people in the Pentagon want this to happen because they realise they're operating to people that don't have the right to even tell them what to do. So Trump and Hillary Clinton, when they were going for election, as all these presidents right back to 1871, they're all operating illegally, and they are CEOs of
a private corporation,
USA Inc.
Yeah.
So the great thing about it is that all of the states in America reiterated their independence from the Federation, from the US Inc., and registered their papers with the World Court. Now, that's why we haven't done that yet, but we can do that. That's why I often talk to people about we should be looking at what they've done, because it really opens us up to the direction we should be going here in Ireland and all across the world, because all these countries are being forced to operate as corporations.
As corporations, yeah.
So this is really close to happening. It's actually the one of the major ways in which it is going to happen is through the whole banking system, as we know, is a black hole. And they, as part of the changes that are coming about, is a new banking system that is asset-backed is being lowered down on top of the present banking system to prevent it totally collapsing, and which it will collapse anyway. But when this other banking system is down there on top of it, it means that money will be coming out that is asset-backed right across the world, and it will soften the blow.
Now, can I ask you, Benjamin Fulford, I'm sure you're aware of who he is.
Yeah.
He talks about the White Dragon Society.
That's right.
Fighting the cabal in the West.
Yeah.
And that they want to reset the whole financial system and bring about world peace, sort the environment out, all that crap, sort out world hunger, and make everybody not like wealthy, but that if you didn't want to work, you didn't have to. You could become an artist and you'd still live comfortably and stuff like that. You'd have a roof over your head.
They talk about it as the world moving into a period of abundance. Now, that's very hard for us to conceive, but we've been forced to live under the tyranny of financial tyranny.
Of interest.
Yeah. Now, conscious people, and that's the wonderful thing about the Dragon societies all over the world are royal families. Some of them are highly corrupt, but these particular White Dragon societies, and some of the Red Dragon Society are said also to be enlightened, and they have always wanted the world to move on. And we're talking about moving on in a spiritual way, in that we're not just locked into politics and who's voting for who in the next 4 years. And that's why, like Trump, all these politicians, none of them talk about consciousness, awareness, and it's all politics, all heady stuff, and the world is ready. There are enough of us. Do you think we've reached the tipping point as far as a conscious awakening is concerned? I do believe that. Well, they say there's only 3 to 5% of people in the world really are required to move it on. And certainly, from my own experience, for the last 40 years, I've been involved in my own consciousness, awareness. And it happened for me, like when I was 14, I was a member of the Society of Psychic and Spiritual Studies here in Dublin, looking at the power of the mind, the second most powerful thing in the universe. And then also hearing about people talk about the power of the heart. And all the ancient masters were revealing to people how they could tap into that while they're still in their human body. And then it predicts what their destiny is going to be, because we have free will. And that's why it's so important when the Irish set up in 1919 a sovereign republic. Yeah, they knew that they were very wise men who wrote the document up. Very, very wise men. And we haven't seen that wisdom. We lost it so quickly. And it was lost in America. But now there are enough people who are enlightened in the world demanding that they take the responsibility. It's not just the freedom. We have responsibility with our free will. And there are enough of us now that are mature enough. We're not kids anymore. Yeah. We want to take responsibility for our own lives. And when enough of us want to do it, we can make it happen. Yeah. And that's where it's going. And it's actually happening at the moment. At the moment, you're going to see a global currency reset happen and being announced by the end of this month. We're going to, and we will likely, Trump is due to step down. He is the prepared to do this. What all these other presidents have not been prepared to do, he's prepared to do it because he knows it's a game, and he's going to step down before the end of this month. And they're going to announce the Nasara Republic. Now, my request to people is to go into YouTube and look up Nasara Republic and look up the history of Nasara and get the history of this. Let it become your own. knowledge, because this is really happening. It's not a fiction.
What about like you can see them now all over. If you turn Sky News on, they're beating the war drums for World War III.
Yeah.
Trump is putting it up to North Korea. He's sending these warships over to North Korea now as we speak. And the North Koreans are saying, if you even attack us, we'll sink one of your aircraft carriers, and if you even raise a gun at us, we'll nuke Japan and we'll nuke South Korea.
Yeah.
You've got all this rhetoric going on, and people are genuinely worried.
Oh yeah, and they should be. But having said that, there are enough enlightened people within the system to stop it happening. Trump wouldn't be one of them, in my eyes.
No,
he's too hot-headed.
I think he's a narcissist anyway. He just wants money for himself and power and everything that goes with that.
And the thing is, there's an element of what he is doing that people are going along with because they can bring about what they want, which is world peace. That this guy Kim in North Korea.
But he's never threatened anyone, Kim Jong-un. Who has he been threatening?
Well, he has threatened Japan, and they say he has. And I'm sure when I look at the state of that country, it certainly isn't in a healthy state. And but having said that, I don't believe they have not been able to start World War III through Syria. Russia, through Putin, has some very wise counsel around them. And he is very cool-headed, and he is not about to be marched into World War III. So, although the cabal have been trying to start World War III in various parts of the world, I don't believe it's going to happen. Because there are enough good people out there doing the right thing.
To try and make sure it doesn't happen.
And it only takes, it's like, it takes you and me doing the right thing in our lives, being awake and aware, a general or colonel, a guy in the army, a female, there's some very, very, very courageous people.
I look at the two of us sitting here talking about like conscious awareness and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of a video I watched on YouTube the other day, and it was from Today Tonight. Do you remember that programme of Pat Kenny? From 1984. And it was shot up in Ballyfermot, and it was about water charges back in 1984. And I was listening to some of the local people who were talking, and they hadn't a clue. They really didn't know. They were just like saying, all these extra taxes are bad and stuff like that. They didn't understand what was actually going on, what was going on behind the scenes. But nowadays, when you speak to people, they go into so much detail about what's going on because they know.
Yeah.
We know what's going on behind the scenes now. We know about the corruption within the Gardaí. We know about the corruption within the government. And you mentioned enlightened people. I read a post by Joe Ducey last night. He put it up on Facebook. And as you know, he's exposing corruption within the Gardaí. Now, I think he's playing a very dangerous game. For his own personal self, I think he is. You know what I mean? Because they can kill you if they want to. And they can. You're up against a monster here. But what he did say was, he was speaking to some guards from Ballina, and they were telling him what's going on. Like that, the Garda HQ up in Dublin have a direct line to Ballina to find out what Joe Ducey is up to. Do you know what I mean? Because they're worried about what he's doing. He's exposing them.
Yeah.
And he's letting the public know, like, these people are corrupt and they're supposed to be above reproach, and they're not.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And he said a guard came to him and he told him that there's lots of guards within the guards who want to do the right thing, but they're terrified.
Sure.
They're afraid of their jobs, they're afraid for their pensions, their mortgages, their children, their families.
Yeah.
That's what's going on. But he was saying they should all just come out together, the whole lot of them, and just weed out this corruption, lose the fear of these people, these higher ups.
Yeah. I mean, when Trump said he wanted to drain the swamp, and then when he got in, and what they discovered,
he's filled it up even more.
Well, yeah,
or has he?
But what they discovered was that they reckon a third of the politicians in Washington are involved in paedophilia.
Pizzagate and all that.
And not just paedophilia, it's actually Satanism. These guys, when you start to research it, you realise these guys are into, it's not just
they're
sexual
sick,
thing.
they're really sick people.
But they are Satanists. Now, whether people believe in Satan or not, these people
They do. I actually said this earlier on.
With them, and even we look at this weekend coming up, and this period of time.
The 28th of April is usually a day of sacrifice and stuff like that, so I would watch out for that day.
And I was listening to a guy the other day on the internet, and he mentioned Ireland as a place in which this blood sacrifice is happening.
It wouldn't surprise me.
It doesn't surprise me at all. But so understanding, having gone down the rabbit hole far enough to come across that, very few people are prepared to look at it.
Yeah.
But what is happening, like even this week, you had a general actually arrested for paedophilia in America, and a sergeant in the New York City Police was put away. So they've also, since Trump has gone in, they reckon 2,500 paedophiles across America.
So do you think the public image we're getting of Trump is far removed from what he's actually doing behind the scenes?
Trump is working on some of the agenda that will come out through Nasara Republic.
Because I remember his inauguration speech. I think it was yourself that said it to me when he was talking about returning America to its constitutional values and stuff like that. All the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the top military brass, all got in line and stood behind him. It's like as if to say, like, we have your back here, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. It was representatives from all of the military sections in America came and stood behind. Nobody ever sat on,
except the one that stood down that day.
Yeah,
there was some general who stood down.
Yeah, but he was from the Homeland.
Homeland Security,
right. And Trump didn't trust him, and in fact, Trump's changed the security around himself because he didn't trust them. So there is an element of Trump that is doing the right thing, but he's such a hothead that sometimes he can go too far.
I think he's great. I mean, when he got elected, I said to people, watch the news, it's going to be great fun from now on, especially with Donald Trump. Yeah,
but they actually didn't think he was going to stay in as long. But having said that, he has brought about a lot of changes that are good and positive. And he is going to step down they say by the end of this month, and Paul Ryan, who is the Speaker of the House, will step in as the interim president between this corporation and the New Republic, and he will be there for 120 days, and they will put out for all the people in America and the world on the mainstream media the story as to really what has happened is going to come out. And then after 120 days, they're going to hold new elections.
I look forward to all of this, if it does happen.
Yeah, well, the thing is that because all of this fictition, you could be like dreamland, world stuff, you're talking about, well, is this ever going to happen? They say that, for instance, the Chinese elite who are backing the new banking system with the gold they have pulled back last weekend because of the elections in France. The cabal said, we're going to get the money anyway, we'll just rig this vote again, because the other guy, I can't think of his name,
Macron or something, his name?
He's from Goldman Sachs and being backed by the cabal.
Yeah, but that says it all.
Le Pen has got the push.
She's a wild card as far as they're concerned.
I mean, I tell you, Europe has to go.
I think it has to go. Yeah. I think it has.
Well, it's part of it was part of the New World Order plan. The European Union, the African Union, So they were planning all these unions, and then stepping stone to
one big thing.
Yeah. Now, I spent 2 days last week at the Brexit conference. But listen, the first one, we could talk about that.
We can talk about that next week, because I have unfortunately run out of time. It is a minute past one, and I have to wrap things up.
Okay.
But Paul, listen, I know you made it in late, but we've had quite a good chat so far. So I really am looking forward now to next week, where we can have the full hour and we'll get an awful lot of stuff out.
So I'd say to people, look at the NESARA, the Nasara Republic, and if you go into YouTube, you'll find what the definition of the history.
Well, what I'll do for the listeners is I'll find a video later on. I'll stick it on the World You Don't Know page, and so anybody listening, then I'll put a link up there later once I get home. So, folks, listen, this has been the World You Don't Know, and I'd like to thank my guest Paul Barnes for coming in. Thanks very much, Paul.
Thank you.
And you will come in again next week. You will. Brilliant. So Paul's going to be here next week. So you'll have an hour and 15-20 minutes of Paul. So quite good. Anyway, folks, this has been the World You Don't Know. And remember, the world is full of great people. If you can't find one, be one. Talk to us all next week. Anyway, I'm going to move on, and I've got my guest in the studio. Good evening, Paul. You're very welcome along to the show again.
How you doing?
Can you pull your mic towards you there a little bit?
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Yeah, it's perfect there, Paul. You're grand there.
Okay.
Paul Barnes, you're very welcome back onto the show. Now, you were on the show last week, and we had a great chat for the 20 minutes you were here. But unfortunately, it was only 20 minutes, so we've got a good 45 minutes to get through as much stuff as we can tonight.
Right.
So, last week we were talking about Nasara.
Uh-huh.
Now, on the way up in the car, I purposely had a listen to one of the latest video blogs that was put up by, I think they were called the Lightworkers or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And they were talking about Nasara and Donald Trump's role in all of this. And a lot of us think Donald Trump is some sort of a bad guy now at the moment. Now, from what this guy was saying in relation to Nasara, Donald Trump is, I suppose you could call him a lone wolf. The cabal thought he was their man, but they were wrong.
Yeah.
The good guys thought he was their man, but they were also wrong. Donald Trump is his own man. He's in it for himself and whatever he can get out of this. And you were saying to me there last week that there was a chance, and just a chance, that he may step down on his 100th day. That hasn't happened, not that we know of.
The way I felt about that last night when I saw the 100th day, they were going to give him his day to enable him to, it's probably part of the negotiations he brought about. But I do expect him to stand down within the next couple of weeks, if not sooner. Right. Because the world is in a desperate state financially. And Donald Trump, when they were saying there that he is bridging between the US Inc. And the New Republic, or the Nasara Republic, that's what I believe he's doing. And it suits him to do it. But I also do believe, I'd like to think his heart is in the right place, because a lot of very good things have happened on his watch. Yeah. And I was listening to the number of people who've been, when he talked about Drain the Swamp, one of the biggest people that has been arrested now and charged is a general, and he was in charge of DARPA. Now that's right up there. DARPA are known to have been involved in child trafficking years ago, and they have and I forget this senator that brought it up in the Senate. Why would the government keep paying this company when they were accused of being involved in this? Which is true. I mean, they get contracts worth billions. But here's the guy that was in charge of it, has now been apprehended, dealt with, and in jail. And he's a general. And there was another guy, I think last week, he was a sergeant in NYPD. And we know that the NYPD have been really looking into the whole Petergate thing. So also when you consider that 2,500 people have been arrested since Trump took up office, connected with child trafficking.
Now these arrests, we haven't heard any of this in the mainstream media, right? There's nothing.
No, the mainstream media won't even mention Petergate, and they won't mention any of this stuff because, they're involved.
The only mention that the mainstream media, particularly in the United States, have given in relation to Pizzagate is that it's a fake news story. It's not real. But I know it's a real story, and it is a real story. I mean, if you go back to I think, is it the Podesta brothers?
Yeah.
They were seen in and around the complex in Portugal where Madeleine McCann went missing at the time she went missing.
Yeah.
And they've been named in this Pizzagate scandal as paedophiles.
Yeah.
So, you put two and two together, put them in the same places where Maddie McCann went missing. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that they may have had something to do with that. And that case in itself stinks to high heaven. The poor little girl is never out of media. And yet 250,000 children in Europe go missing every year, and there's not a word about any of them, just her.
Yeah.
So there is an agenda at play here.
Oh, big time. I mean, it is so big that it involves, they say if they cleared out all the paedophiles in Washington, there's a third of them involved.
There'll be nobody left in Washington.
Yeah. So it's so big. It's so big, and it does actually require... See, all of them are going to be cleared out when they do away with the US Inc. All of them.
As in, you're talking about the US as a corporation.
They all have to stand down, and we're led to believe that the legal arm of the government have to stand down as well, which would be really interesting.
Right.
Because most of them are serving as barristers. They're members of the bar.
Yeah.
And they say that no members of the bar will be allowed be members of the new government. And, they also say that they will have to be retrained in civil law. So the whole legal department in America is due to step down as well, according to Nasara. And the fact that what I said there last week was Donald Trump is prepared to do it. Obama wasn't prepared. Bill Clinton wasn't prepared to do it. But we're led to believe that Donald Trump is prepared to do it. So that's why I say to people like, watch the next couple of weeks. But it's actually what they did last week. America has reached its ceiling again as regards its debt. And it was meant to be closed down, I think, on the 28th of last month. And they kicked the can down the road until the 7th of May. So that's so they expect to have something happen between now and the 7th. So hold your patience as regards Trump stepping down and the announcement of Nasara Republic. They also we're led to believe that the new US note is coming. The US note will be the USN as opposed to the US dollar. US dollar was the Federal Reserve dollar, not backed by...
It's funny you should just mention that there, because the video I was watching, I was only watching it out in the car just before I came in, and the Nasara video that I was watching, and I think it's only went up a day or two ago, so it's the latest information from them. And they showed a picture of the new US $100 bill, and it doesn't have any of the symbolism that the other American dollars have, which is, like a homage to the cabal, so to speak. This is like a rub in the face for them.
Yeah.
And what this Nasara video was saying was that there is going to be a global currency reset, that the oil is no longer going to be valued against the dollar, that it's going to have gold back in it. Which, I don't know what that's going to do for the world now. I mean, Benjamin Fulford said that this was going to happen. There's going to be a lot of upset for the first few months. People are going to feel a pinch. But then all of a sudden...
More in America, and actually when I say in America, certainly it will happen. They reckon that the US dollar will probably depreciate by about 30%. But that will be within America itself. The international dollar will be fine, because there's more international dollar. I mean, the only dollar that exists now, you could say, because it hasn't been announced, is the international dollar. And America didn't have its own currency. Now they're saying America has its own currency, and it's coming through the Treasury, not through the IRS or the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve is gone. It will be there for a year. So there are a lot of things, very positive things, that when Nasara is announced in America, it will mean a lot of very good things. So, like for instance, people won't be paying any income tax. And this another thing that what Trump was dealing with last week was the new tax regime for 2007. And he couldn't tell it like it is, because the thing is just about to change, and the whole tax regime will change with Nasara. There won't be any more personal tax, and there will only be a tax of up to 14% on new items, non-essential items. Food and clothes and medicine won't have any tax on it at all. So these will make a big difference to people.
And do you think that this is really going to happen, and within the near future? Do you think it might happen, or? Well,
what I would say to you is, I'm not somebody who just came across this last week.
No, I know that. You've done your research over the years. Yeah, I know that.
I've been studying this for 4 years, and it's been going on a whole lot longer than that. So all I'm indicating is there are really good people within the system that have been preparing for this change, and the fact that it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not going to.
Because that's what a lot of people, like in the Truth movement, are giving out about. They look at the likes of Ben Fulford, they look at the likes of Nasara, and they have all these wonderful concepts, and they're all looking out the window and saying, look, there's nothing going on. They're still bombing the shit out of the Middle East. There's still death and destruction all over the world. Are we to believe these people, or?
Well, another thing I was looking at yesterday, a different guy talking about the global currency reset. And one of the things, there were 3 things he marked out that were going to make a big difference. I normally take notes. I have little pads with me when I'm listening to stuff. Anyway, the third one, the first 2 have already happened, and I can't quite remember them at the moment, but they've already happened. But the third one was to do with, oh dear God, can't remember that one either. But when I look at this material and the people that are involved in it and the credibility they have and how they're qualified in what they're doing. These people that are telling the true story about Nasara never get onto the mainstream media.
No, you won't. You're not going to see.
But they're out there on the internet and have been there for a long, long time. But because the mainstream media is still so much controlled by the cabal, that's not where you would look for it to happen.
You're not going to see it on
You're
the
not going to see
mainstream
it there.
media.
So the reality is this is going to happen and suddenly be announced, and there will be, they say that the media will be taken over at that stage, and there will be continuous 24/7 educational programs out there for not only the Americans but for the world.
For the rest of the world, putting people straight on what's really going on.
What has happened. So that's why truthers and researchers and people, we can be sceptical. You know what I did today when I was disappointed that we didn't get the announcement. The announcements
over the
I'm
weekend.
expecting over the weekend. But what I tend to do to help with that, is to look at the bigger picture. And what I started looking at, because the earth changes, and if you talk about Nibiru, if you talk about what's being seen in the sky, the sun and this object beside the sun popping up all over the world, and other people talking about these, and you look at the evidence that's there. Now, these are ordinary Joe Soaps. They don't control and produce this material, in my eyes. They don't have access to it. But they're out there and they're using their camera and they're photographing what's going on.
Yeah.
And you see the sun rising, and then this plasma ball to the side of it. And now you can't even see it as a plasma ball, but there's a brightness there that is totally different. And when you look at these changes that are happening cosmically, to me, that's what's driving the agenda. It's not what the New World Order are doing or where the New Republic are in taking over. It's these cosmic changes that are happening. That the reason why it's so important that there's got to be a back wall as to when these changes happen is because of the earth changes. Because nobody is preparing anybody for that.
But how do you prepare for big changes like that?
Well, we need to educate ourselves, and we need to open up our minds, because some of these changes, they say, will be so big that we cannot be on the planet, on the surface of the planet, when they start happening.
And if it does happen, so where do we go?
Well, they say, and this is why it's so important for people to be open-minded, to look into this material in a deep enough way. I would ask people to look at Admiral Byrd talking about the inner Earth and the evidence he came. He went to the Arctic and the Antarctic.
And the Antarctic, yeah.
And the evidence he came up with. And then he came back and he spoke about it. And there's video. Even recently I've seen video that he filmed when he was flying over this. And he came over these warm lakes and vegetation. And
they say in Antarctica there's land down there that you could actually live on. And that's where the elites now, that's their bolt hole.
And if you look at what they say is being discovered in the Antarctic, and all these world leaders going down there. Kerry was down there on the day of the election.
Yeah, I know that, yeah.
And Putin, they say,
Obama took a visit there as well,
The Pope has been there. All these, people have been there.
Yeah, Pope
and what
Francis.
they say they have discovered is evidence of these two different civilizations
that we knew nothing about.
Well, we actually have evidence of one of them. If we look at the skeletons that are being discovered in Peru,
These giant skeletons, is it?
with the
elongated
big heads,
skulls,
and they say they're the same ones that were the pharaohs. If you look at Tut and all that, so they. And there's evidence that the Vatican are connected to that they know about this civilization. Even Karen Hudis had the courage to talk about it at one stage. But the problem with talking about stuff like that, it's so far away from people when they're looking at trying to hold on to their house or hold on to their job, or they're fighting the water issues. These are where all people here in Ireland particularly are dealing with day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, that's on our doorstep.
But as a researcher, I would look at that, but not in the detail that other people. I leave that for them. But I spend a lot of time looking at what's going on in America and then looking out beyond that. Yeah. And it helps me to have the courage to speak about it.
Yeah, but listen, I want to go to a quick break, Paul, and we'll take it up after this break. Folks, we'll be back in 2 minutes for Paul Barnes. Talk to us very shortly.
Broadcasting to Lucan, this is Liffey Sound. 96.4 FM.
You're listening to Liffey Sound
on 96.4
FM.
Now, folks, you're very welcome back. They were short ads there. We were in deep in conversation here in the studio and about to branch out in a new subject, but we'll have to hold that till the end of the show, unfortunately. Paul, you were saying there, we were just talking there during the break about Donald Trump, and I was saying to you how he's narcissistic in nature. He only really cares about himself, and you know, through a couple of TV shows I've seen him engaging in, even in that Apprentice, you could see the kind of person that he really is. You know, he has no empathy for people other than himself. You know, if something didn't go his way, he probably would end up feeling sorry for himself, but he certainly doesn't feel sorry for anybody else. So it's hard to see him as the good guy. But if you look at what he done on Saturday, for example, he signed an executive order rolling back Obama's gun policies, telling the American people, no, the Second Amendment's here to stay, end of. And we all know, like, as researchers into this kind of stuff, we know why the Second Amendment's in place. It's not so Americans defend themselves against cowboys and Indians. It's against a tyrannical government. You've got 300 million people in America who are armed to the teeth. That's the largest standing army on the planet. Yeah. Even if they're only handguns, it's still a big army. Yeah. You know, you can fire what you want at them. You're not going to kill them all. But if you take their guns away, you can crush a nation. Mm-hmm. You know, Adolf Hitler proved that in the Second World War by disarming the population. Then he crushed them.
Sure, you talk about here. You know,
well, we don't have guns in this country, and we can't stand up for ourselves now. Because
in a way, I kind of feel, well, okay, we've got different skills, and it's up to us to develop the skills of negotiation, of understanding, to develop our own ability to empathise with people, even those whom we don't agree with.
Yeah.
We in order for us to try and change it, we've got to understand the way in which they feel. And, you know, even when it comes down to our family, trying to find ways to heal the differences that we have. And I find that as a personal challenge all the time. And I'm very grateful for it. I don't reject it now, whereas I may have when I was younger. But I have looked at my own evolution, you know, from the time I was a kid, and I recognise that I'm evolving. I'm evolving all the time, and I grant that to other people. You know, somebody who may have killed in the past. Now, for instance, we look at Paisley in the north. To me, he was somebody that went through a massive evolution, as did the people in the IRA.
Yeah.
I used to meet, I worked in the north of Ireland, and I wrote a poem called The Peaceful Warrior, from meeting people who in the past were prepared to shed blood for what they believed in. But as they educated themselves and evolved, they actually realised they could bring about changes without feeling that the person they were bringing about the change with was their enemy.
Yeah.
And they separated what the person was doing that was negative for them from the person themselves, and left them with their dignity.
So we always tend to, that goes right back to getting bullied in school, for example. We always tend to remember what the bully was like, rather than who they are as a person right now. And I always say to people, you know, who think their life was a mess and stuff like that, I'd always say to them, look, who you are right now at this precise moment in time is the end result of your past thoughts and actions. It's who you were, it's not who you are.
Yeah.
You know, if you have the belief that somebody can change, well, they will change. But if you want to focus on what it is you don't like about that person, you're never going to see past them. It's as simple as that. You will always see that bully in the schoolyard.
Yeah.
You know, and I always say this to people.
So I'm very optimistic for the future, because I'm optimistic for me that I am capable of evolving when I get out of my own way. And I'm optimistic for other people, regardless of who they are. And that's what they say about the cabal, for instance. How deep is your love? If you were to sit down and talk to somebody. I remember, I was doing a radio program of my own up in the north when Bush and Blair came to Hillsborough. And when people were getting off the bus for the protest, I was asking the question, if you got a chance to sit down and have a cup of tea with Bush and Blair, could you do it?
Why could you?
Could you do it? A lot of people said no. They would feel so angry. They wouldn't know what to say. They were just too confused, or they felt they wouldn't be allowed to. But it was a very legitimate question, because it's like, until you feel peace within yourself, when you're facing somebody that is like that. And people, we hear people nowadays who've had their family blown up or killed or whatever, and they come on and they actually have that already.
Yeah.
That
Do you know that? You remind me of someone there when you just said families who are blown up and stuff like that. One of the most amazing people I've seen over the last 20 years when it comes to forgiveness is Tim Parry, the guy from Warrington whose child was blown up by the IRA. I think there was two children killed that day in Warrington. There was a bomb at a shopping centre. And his son, I can't remember what his son's name was, but I think his name was Tim Parry, the father. And he came on television, like within a few days of that happening, and said he forgives those who did that to him. You know, he understands why they did what they did. They were fighting a cause.
Isn't it?
It's absolutely extraordinary. And I've never forgotten that, you know, that someone can do that. You know, because we all say, if anyone ever does that to my kids, I'll bleed and kill them. And, you know, it's human nature to think like that. And I'll never forgive them and stuff like that. But within a few days, this man came out and forgave them. And now, as someone who's had quite a lot of crap done to him over the last few years, we were speaking about this last week, we were in the Kestrel. Yeah. You know, and the kind of stuff, I have it in my heart to forgive people, no matter what they do to me. Because it's easier for me to forgive someone than it is to carry that burden around in my mind and let someone live rent-free in my head and drive me insane. Yeah. Because the moment I forgive them, I can move on and do something else and concentrate on something else. Yeah. You know, so Nelson Mandela even said it. You have to forgive. If you don't forgive, you'll rot from the inside out, and you will.
That's it. I mean, you know, when I hear people talk about the paedophiles and the Satanists, and I realise that actually we need to be able to forgive them. If you listen to Cindy, do you ever listen to Cindy? What's that woman's name, Paddy? Anyway, she's a woman that comes up on the TV and she talks about natural law and all the rest of it. And she talks about the fact that we cannot put people in cages.
It's pointless.
And that we need to actually give them respect and give them space and time to consider. Now, she said some people aren't even ready for that. You know, they're not at all. They've gone too far, and they will just say, "No, you just kill me," you know, or whatever, or they'll commit suicide or whatever. But there will be people, and she said, that have done horrendous things, and they need to be given space and time in which they can consider what it is they've done and forgive themselves and move on, and then we have to forgive them.
So then you have people coming on onto that argument and saying, well, what about their victims? What about them? And that's a very fair argument as well, you know.
But equally, it's a karmic thing. You know, there are lessons to be learnt on every side. And Paddy and I were talking today about relationships, and I was saying most relationships in the past for me have been karmic. But I'm at a stage of my life now where my destiny is so important that I have very little time, and I have to concentrate on it and do it. And if a relationship comes along, it needs to be very mature. Needs to be very mature. The person, I wouldn't want to have a relationship.
You haven't got time for a woman with silly follies, and I get that 100%. Yeah.
What I'm looking for actually in a relationship is somebody who's clear about their destiny, and we can support each other in our destiny. But somebody who's unsure of what it is, why they're here, what they're here for, what they need to do, they have a lot of growing to do. Yeah. And so I haven't got the time. I'm not the person for them. Yeah. Because I wouldn't have time then to do what I need to do. Because a lot of what I need to do at the moment isn't about personal, it's about society. Yeah. And this is what they talk about, Indigo Kids. Have you ever heard of Indigo Kids?
I have heard of Indigo Kids.
Indigo Kids have come into the world, they say, with a sense of destiny about the world, not about themselves. It's about the world. They've come to bring about the changes that are required in the world. And that is actually what I feel for myself.
Well, it's not funny you should say that. I do what I do, and I've been doing this radio show now for over 6 years. The research I've been doing for the last 20 years, you know, looking at the world, trying to figure the world out and stuff like that. I'm not trying to figure it out for myself. I don't need to. Yeah. You know, I know the world is a dark place, but I also know it's an absolutely beautiful place as well. So I don't need to figure out the world. I'm just trying to do my little part to bring about, you know, the peace and abundance that we know it's available, it's there. Yeah. You know, and like that video I watched last week, I mentioned to you about the Dutch whistleblower. Yeah. He said there's only 8,500 people doing all of this to the planet. That's all there is. He said the moment we stand up, and it's something you both said as well last week to me, that We only need to reach a tipping point of anywhere between 10 and 15% of the people to wake up and stand up, and that's it. It's game over for this dark cabal, whatever it is you want to call them. It's game over. You know, once you light this room up, it cannot be darkened again. It's as simple as that. So we just need that flame to be lit, and to be lit fairly soon, you know, before it's too late.
Yeah. Well, I'm personally, I have a very strong vision of how it is going to be in the future, and not that far away. And I realise, because I've fed, it's like, what part of yourself have you fed to enable that to happen? I spend a lot of time feeding the positive side, looking at, I know about the negative, but I think it's so important to know what the answers are. Who are the people? Who are the good people? What should we be looking out for? And I feel more optimistic now than I did when I was in my 20s. Even though it's darker now than it was when I was in my 20s.
Now, when you were in your 20s, Paul, no, I'm not going to ask what your age is now, but you're
I'm
still
67. I'm 67.
Well, you're still only a young fella, Paul. You're still only a young man. When you were in your 20s, would you have considered yourself awake, or would you consider yourself, you know, looking back on yourself in your 20s, like on that person that you were in your 20s? Or were you just going along to get along like everybody else? Or?
No, I wasn't, unfortunately. Well, I mean, I just have to say it like it is. When I was 14, I was a member of the Society of Psychic and Spiritual Studies,
right.
Even though I was being educated in a Christian Brother boarding school where you were having Christianity shoved down your neck. And it wasn't even Christianity, it was their Catholicism, you know. Anyway, but I was asking questions. The psychic side was the power of the mind, and the spiritual side was this other dimension that very few people seem to know about. You had the spiritualists, but a lot of that was mental. And I was asking the questions, what am I doing here? Where did I come from? Where am I going? What's it about? So I was asking those questions when I was 14.
I was myself at that age as well,
and by the time I was 22, I mean, I was having a good time. I was living in England, but then the darkness of how dark it was and how corrupt it was right at the top of society started to hit me, and the trouble started in the north, and people around me, I was living in Windsor, you know, and they hadn't a clue why this was happening. But neither did they understand the riots that were happening in the big cities in England at the time. And I was asking those questions. When I was a kid, I used to collect folk songs. And the reason was because folk songs tracked social development. And when I went to England, I collected English folk songs because it was doing the same thing. But I must admit, I was asking the questions at an early age. So by the time I was 21, I came across a 14-year-old guy who was a master of the heart. And I'd come across this head and the heart thing, but I'd never come across a master of the heart. I came across lots of masters of the head, but not of the heart. And what he was saying was so simple that it really affected me. And I was ready for it. I was really ready for it. And he prepared me to be still in my mind, my body. And then he revealed to me simple techniques that are there for everybody, how to go inside and experience your inner being.
So you're talking about meditation here?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He doesn't even mention that because so many people have a concept of what meditation is. He just talks about it as 4 techniques. But they're how to turn your senses. That is how you experience the world outside.
Turn them in.
You can turn each one of those in and you can experience the inner being. And that's where this thing of sovereignty comes from, and free will, and that the other dimension, that passion, those human qualities. All of those things are real when you're coming from in here. If you're pursuing it through the head, there's so much ego involved.
Yeah, but that's it, the ego, it gets in the way.
And there are a lot of people in the world who are pursuing good, but through their head, and with the result, there's so much ego involved that you keep hitting walls.
Yeah.
You know, well, it's a softer journey altogether when you're going through your heart.
Yeah. But listen, I need to go to my last set of ads. So, Paul, I'm going to be back in folks, I should be back in 2 minutes with Paul Barnes. Talk to you very shortly.
You're listening to Liffey Sound. www.liffeysoundfm.ie.
Listen online. Community radio at its best.
Local programmes, local presenters, local news. Tune to Liffey Sound 96.4 FM.
Now, folks, you're very welcome back. I got a text message there through Skype from Ray Moore, one of my regular listeners. Good evening, Ray. Long time now here. He says Colin Parry was the dad in relation to that explosion that was in Warrington, and it was his son. He was called Tim. That was the little boy's name. And yes, Colin Parry, an amazing man, an amazing human being. As I said, he had the ability to forgive the IRA less than 4 or 5 days after his son got killed.
As did the people of Derry. When so many of them have forgiven their murder,
They have, yeah. I mean, it's like Nelson Mandela says, Paul, the only way, what's gone on in the past has gone on. We can't do anything, you could poke holes at it all you bloody want. You're never going to change a damn thing about it. So the only logical way forward is not to forgive and forget, but to definitely forgive. You should never forget what went on in the past, because you'll never learn from it if you do. Yeah. But we should definitely forgive, because it's pointless carrying all that kind of hurt and anger and rage. It's not going to. It's non-productive.
Yeah, and the other thing is put your energy into developing the new model, not fighting the old one, and that's why it's so important for people to do some research about what Nasara means, because they're talking about that being divinely inspired, as they say the American Constitution was inspired by Saint Germain. But on Saint Germain, if you know anything about Saint Germain in history, they say he is very much involved in what's going on at the moment. And for structures that are required to enable humanity to move forward, and that's the whole of humanity, to evolve and move forward. So Nasara is actually part of that, and that's why it's important for people who are concerned about the future to actually look at all the good thinking that people and work that people have done in developing these concepts, and how they're stepping stones for us to move forward.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned something there a couple of minutes ago about people focusing on all the crap that's going on, like the wars and stuff like that. Now, something I watched many, many years ago, and it's something I bring up on the show from time to time, is the Law of Attraction. When I seen that documentary, The Secret, I'm sure half the bloody world has seen it at this stage. But one of the things that he said in that was, if you concentrate on that which you don't like, you're just going to keep manifesting it. Yeah. So, we can get out all we want and keep protesting about wars. We don't like war, we're anti-war. But as long as you have the word war in that sentence, you're going to keep manifesting war. What we should be out there doing is having pro-peace rallies, like John Lennon advocated. Hence the reason they bloody got rid of him, because, if the law of attraction is real, and that we do have this ability as human beings to bring into manifestation that which we concentrate on most, if the whole world was to concentrate on peace tomorrow, it would happen like that.
Yeah.
And I think the powers that be know this.
And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important to people being aware of themselves as a multi-dimensional being. Yeah. When I would say to you, we are here in our physical body at the moment, and it is possible for us to experience our soul or our spiritual being.
Yeah, but I think we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, as opposed to the other way around.
And so then we can look at sorting out our emotional life and our relationships. And this is what I say about our karmic relationships. Up to that point are very karmic. They're hard lessons for us to learn. But when you've learned about how you can feel love within yourself, regardless of anybody else, regardless of where you are in the universe, you can feel love within yourself. That's so precious. But then it enables you to come and deal with your emotions on a human level, deal with your relationships, and then deal with how we think. And the mind being the second most powerful thing in the universe, then we realise what we think is really important. And we were talking there just before the show started about punk rock music and how I can't relate to it because there's so much anger coming from the people who... So, yes, it is where they're at. And it is necessary, no doubt, for them.
But you think that, like, that music, when you listen to it, is that not a reflection of the chaos that we see in the world today?
Yeah, but again, it's getting back to what you're saying. If you're concentrating on the war and the chaos,
you're going to keep manifesting war and chaos. Yeah, right.
And that's my point.
Yeah.
That it's okay for those who are in it, and if it's helping them. Because one of the things I was going to say was, when I was a young man, at 21, I was living in Windsor, and it was before I learned how to go inside, right? And I was so upset about something that I'd come across. I went to see a friend of mine who was an artist and a pianist, beautiful guy, much older than I was at the time. He was 35 or something. I was maybe 19. But when I went to see him, he saw the state I was in, and he came in, he got me to lie down, and he put on Beethoven on the
record
player. And it was expressing anger, really angry music, right? But then it took you out of the angry music. And they said that Beethoven, I read a book many years later, it was called The Esoteric Power of Music Throughout the Ages. And when it talked about Beethoven, said that he was like the first psychotherapist. He used music to express every emotion. So maybe that's what these guys are expressing, but they need to be able to take people out of it. Now, that's what Beethoven as a master did. He was able to take me, and I was able to relate to the fear and the anger that it was in the music, but then he took me out of it.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't until years later I realised how powerful that was.
Yeah.
This guy didn't tell me what he was doing, but he understood. Words were of no benefit to me. Music could have done it, and it did. And that's why I say, when you understand the hidden meaning and structure of music.
Right. Are you aware that after the Second World War, I think it was the Nazis who discovered this during the war, or just prior to the war, but they discovered that music played at the natural harmonic frequency for music is 432 hertz, and what they discovered was that if you crank it up to 440 hertz, doesn't matter what the music is, it invokes anger in people, you know, and disharmony in people. And since the end of the Second World War, all music, all popular music that we listen to every day, that we've all grown up listening to, is broadcast in 440 hertz. It's recorded in 440, which is not the natural resonance for music. The natural resonance is 432. Yeah. And I urge you, go away and listen to some 440 music, and then listen to the same tune in 432, and you can feel the difference. You can actually feel it.
Yeah. No, I remember coming across a guy at the AV2 conference. Trying to think of what his name, but he was really emphasising the importance of this. And
it wasn't Mark Devlin, was it?
No, it wasn't. He's an American guy. I forget his name, but anyway, it's so important, and this is why the arts are really important for me in my life. Even though I mean, I'm a poet. But I used to listen to a lot of music. I don't listen to as much now, but I really appreciate it. And the arts for helping to direct and make society in general aware are really important. And that's why for 20 years I've been developing this concept of a discovery centre. Yeah. And it was to do with the arts and science. And now getting an opportunity of introducing that concept to people, a discovery club. Yeah. And we're talking about developing this all across Ireland to open people up to the positivity that is happening through the music, through the arts, through poetry, through writing, through thinking. And that there are people who are really conscious, and they can consciously help guide society. And then there are people who are lost. And all they're doing is creating more and more people chaos. That are lost. So being able to use your discrimination as to what way you would spend your time, you know, where you would spend your time, what you plug into, as you grow more aware, and I'm not talking about older, I know young kids who are aware of this. They will not put up with crap. You know, if you talk about those indigo kids, they can sense when somebody is sincere and connected to nature, and when they're not. Yeah. And if they're not, they'll just
stay away from them.
But they'll speak out against it. And in schools, they find them very disruptive because they won't put up with nonsense.
Well, maybe I was an indigo child in school, because I never put up with any nonsense in school, and I was kicked out by the time I was 13. Yeah. They just could not educate me, no matter how hard they tried. Well, I wouldn't listen.
There you go. You probably, I think, you know, a number of us, Paddy here is another one.
I think we're all indigo children in one sense.
Indigo kids that we are here to bring about.
But look, at the end of the day, Paul, right? I know you about 3 or 4 years. Paddy probably is a similar length of time through various meetups and stuff like that. And we could just as easily just go our separate ways and do whatever the bloody hell we want in life. We don't have to come together. Because what we're doing as a group of friends, is we're not doing anything for ourselves. What we want to see is a wonderful world for everybody else. That's all I want to see. I'm not interested. My world is fine the way it is. Do you know what I mean? I'm not unhappy. I'm very happy in my world. But I see so much unhappiness out there. If I can do anything to make it better for everybody else, well, that's what I'll do. Yeah. And that's what I've been doing.
And it's not being afraid. You know, people say, "Oh, you're here to change the world." Yeah.
Yeah, I am here to change the world.
I'm not happy with the way it is.
But what's the point of being here if that's not your goal? We're here to create change, but positive change at that.
Yeah, there are people, though, who are afraid of their ego.
Yeah.
You know, they have no sense of ego for themselves, and there's such a thing as good ego.
Of course there is,
and when you devote your time in your life and your energy to bringing about positive change,
that's a good ego.
It's good ego.
Yeah, I mean, ego has a bad name. Yeah. You know, everyone says, "Oh, look, he's egotistical," and it does. That's a very bad connotation. But as you just said, there's good and bad in everything. Yeah. So you can have a bad ego, but you can also have a good one. Paul, do you have any poems with you there?
I do. Yeah.
Do you want to give us a poem to end the show? We've got about 3 minutes left. If you have a relevant poem.
Okay, well, I'll maybe the Peaceful Warrior would be the
perfect
relevant poem. See if I can find my glasses here and make sure I can see. These are the auxiliary pair. Anyway, this is a poem I wrote when I was working as a community development worker up in the north of Ireland, right, where I was coming across people on both sides of the divide who'd actually shed blood. You know, right, they were killers in the eyes of the world, but in their own eyes they weren't. And anyway, I wrote this because I recognised these people had changed within themselves, as we all can. So it's called The Peaceful Warrior in the Battle for the Heart. O earthly peaceful warrior in this battle for the heart, we just have to fight this battle or we'll be pulled apart. Some of you may feel weary because of battles in the past, but take heart, my dearest friends. You'll be with us till the last. If the warrior is within you and you have a need to fight, it's your responsibility or right. If you believe in evolution, you know it is the time to bring our hearts and minds together, to bring reason to the rhyme. Some believe because of many lives we have lived before, we've returned again at this time to even up the score. Buddhists say it is a cycle, there for us to break, or be caught up in endless madness. Now who wants that, for goodness sake? The skills that are required include our courage and our might, but there's something more important still if we're going to win this fight. If love of life is not within us, we haven't got a chance. For whoever pays the piper then will get our feet to dance. We have come to fight this battle, that you surely know. As we look about the world today, the evidence is on show. But as warriors, we have surely shed enough blood in the past. Now it's time for us to seek a peace that will really last. So earthly peaceful warriors in this battle for the heart, we must shake off this cursed sleep now, if we're to play our part. Make love of life our battle cry as we take on this task. Then the peace we feel within our hearts will emerge on this earth at last.
What an amazing poem. Folks, that was a brilliant poem by the wonderful Paul Barnes. Paul, listen, thanks very much. I really enjoyed that poem, and we have unfortunately come to the end of the show, so I will invite you back on again in the near future, Paul, because we could just sit here talking for hours and hours and hours. There's so much stuff we can talk about. You know, we can pick a subject and off we go for an hour. We can go off for 2 hours, but unfortunately, I only get an hour. That's so thanks very much for coming up, and yourself too, Paddy. Thanks very much for coming along. So until next time, folks, this has been The World You Don't Know. And remember, the world is full of wonderful people, and if you can't find one, be one. I'll see you all next week.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Breaking humanity, one soul at a time. This is The World You Don't Know radio show with your host, Nick O'Connor.